it's of course easy to say we need to study male mental health, but meanwhile, you as a parent may be right now looking for a therapist for a boy. So, and so how do you find that person? Let me answer that in two ways. The first way is going to be the resources available in your community. The second way is going to be when you're interviewing therapists, ask them these questions about how their therapy practice is set up. So let me do the first, which is on the Kellen CARES website, right? There are links. That's a place to go. And then in your city, wherever you are, you're going to type into Google or tap into mental health therapists and boys, mental health therapists or counselors and adolescent boys. Use keywords that show who is working with boys, and specifically who is working with adolescent boys. And then ask around. I mean, word of mouth is crucial. So if you're in a school system and there are other parents of sons, ask those other parents of sons, who did you use, who was good, who wasn't good, because that word of mouth is really valuable. And then as you're assessing whether this therapist would be good for your son, look for like these 5 things. I mentioned the peripatetic. See if that therapist requires all the clients to come in and sit for 50 minutes as opposed to moving around. And you can ask the therapist that. I mean, they're not going to lie. So if you say to the therapist, do you ever, how many sessions do you do walk and talk, or is yours set up so that it's sitting? And, they should be honest and say, well, it's set up to be sitting. If it's set up to be sitting, unless you have an incredibly verbal boy, and there are some, I happen to be very verbal, there are a number of us, and if you have that incredibly verbal boy, then maybe this works for him. Or if he somehow is bonded to that therapist through something else, like they're both into cars, or, there's ways they could get bonded, it could work. But for a lot of boys, that just sitting is going to be clue number 1. And then if you can get into that office and look at it or ask them, see if they have manipulatives, things, balls, Nerf bats, little basketball hoops, that kind of thing, and see if they have music. Or ask them, do you use music? Do you use video? Can the kids make a video? In other words, are they using multimedia? If that therapist is allowing movement and supporting physical movement, and that therapist has all these manipulatives and art and graphics and all this, that's probably like, oh, okay, this therapist probably understands. And we want to remember this thing about movement. It's no joke. The male cerebellum is more active than the female, and males process more of their brain activity through the cerebellum. The cerebellum's at the back of the brain, it's at the base, and it's the doing center. For a number of males, they can't access the rest of their brain unless their cerebellum is going. And people know this because they know how much males tap and their bodies move. And they probably haven't realized why this is. Well, the males themselves are trying to get their cerebellum active so that they can send signaling up to the top of the brain, which is where they're supposed to do homework or where they're supposed to respond to the therapist. So we got to keep that cerebellum in mind and train all the therapists, everyone in that. And so when you're looking at a therapy office, you're going to be looking for things like that, and to a great extent, what they're going to be doing is creating an attractiveness to the cerebellum. They're going to make the boys are going to know that their brains will find a place there because their cerebellum will be active, they will be active, it's multimedia, there's other visual sources, etc., and so they should hopefully feel more at home.